Oh, wow. We are off to a dynamite start here.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Taste Like Music. Jason, Joe, and Crams are here. We are tackling Pulp this week. Cram is pumped about the new Kate Bush fascination. But that's not what we're here to talk about, but maybe we will. But we were talking about Pulp today, Jarvis Cocker, Britpop, 7 albums to rank. Every week we rank a different band here, all their studio albums. We go through them, give them a fresh listen, and then decide which ones are our favorites. So going into this, I don't know a ton of Pulp. I think I've listened to Different Class before in full, and I've probably heard bits or a few tracks from His and Hers and This Is Hardcore, but that's about all I know going in. How about you guys?
I started getting into Pulp a little bit kind of after we started doing this channel, actually, when we went through albums of the year, songs of the year, really started exploring a little more Britpop. Because I don't think I had heard anything until past couple of years. I mean, the band just was nowhere in America at all. I never remember hearing any of their songs, any of their, even a mention, basically. But last couple of years, I've been getting into them. I was familiar with the big three, His and Hers, Different Class, and This Is Hardcore. But I had no idea they went back all the way to like 1983, and then they had an album in the 2000s even. So I wasn't all caught up on Pulp, but I do know some of their stuff.
Yeah, I didn't know much of them at all. I never listened to an entire record, I don't think, and just knew a handful of songs, almost exclusively from the 90s. Like Joe, had no idea they went back as far as the 80s and even had that sound. I thought they were just like quick burnout, flash in the pan, 90s Britpop, while it was hot kind of deal. But yeah, that's it.
All right. So like I said, we do a different band every week. If that sounds interesting to you, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. You never know what you're going to get with us. Sometimes they're bands that we know and love. Sometimes, in this instance, bands that we're not super familiar with, and even occasionally bands that we don't even like. So let's see how this plays out. Like I said, 7 records. Who wants to start?
I'll kick it off. There are 7 records, and there's only one I'm not crazy about. So 6 out of 7, pretty good. Pretty good light bulb going off for me in this Pulp universe. But the one that falls short of my big 3-star rating for good albums or above, I've got Freaks at 2.5. This is their second album from 1987. And, it's darkness bound, darkness all around. Some of it's kind of cool. Fairground is cool, but they're doing kind of like this gothic, like eulogy for carnies. I Want You as a cool, like Love Struck kind of 70s vibe, almost like Love Hurts. I kind of dig it. But I'm not crazy about the way Jarvis Cocker kind of sings until that like classic Britpop phase. And in fact, I will go as far as to say, I don't think this band in the 80s really knows who they are all that well. And it's kind of weird because in a way they take themselves way too seriously at the beginning and then kind of like lighten up a little bit. So it's almost like reverse, like their chronology should be reversed, whereas like they do all this like impish boyish charm in beginning and have fun with everything and then get really serious and, a little pretentious at times, which I kind of find this album, which is probably music to Joe's ears. But some of it has some cool stuff to it. I think there's a cool pop element to a few songs, like I Want You has like the bum bum bums and all that. Yeah, Master of the Universe is kind of cool. And there's like these sinister kind of things and everything's still kind of slightly catchy. Like they never go like full experimental or for like full like subversive elements. Life Must Be So Wonderful is kind of cool and moody and mopey and cynical. Anorexic Beauty is kind of cool, but it just seems like they're in their head so much and they're overthinking it and kind of lazy at times. I don't know. Never Ending Story is kind of big and bombastic with like these horror movie soundtrack kind of vibes. I like the slide guitar and Don't You Know. But like I said, I just don't really think anything is really coming together as far as like a full message. Their lyrics are so good in the 90s, and right now they're still kind of tweeting around, figuring everything out. So I think it's decent. I think there's some cool stuff to it, but I'm only going 2.5 for Freaks, and then it goes up after that.
All right. I guess I can go next. We'll save Joe for last since he's the big Britpop guy. I'm going with Separations last, the record from 1992. This one was actually recorded in 89, but it wasn't released outside of France until 92. I think you can kind of start to hear the beginning of the Pulp sound on this record. There's definitely a pretty good hint of it here, at least. But at the same time, I think it's kind of a weird record. There's like some stuff on this record that reminds me a little of like Nick Cave, like the title track. There's also the song She's Dead, which almost sounds to me like a Richard Hawley song, who would later play with Pulp. And I don't know if he was ever an official member, but he's on their final record, and I believe he toured with them a bit. But then the tone of the record just like completely shifts on side 2. It gets really synthy, really dancey. Got like this acid house and rave culture thing going on, which I really do not like. And I think that sort of world and that influences their later records a lot, but it does so in kind of a cool way. And it's not like super overt. It's just kind of a thing that has influenced it, but it's not like the thing. Here, it's just, I think it overwhelms the music a little. I don't think they do that sound incredibly well. The closer on this record, especially, This House is Condemned, I think is unbearable. I think it's easily the worst song in their entire catalog. I really hate the sound of the synths on it, the repetition, the lack of any interesting musical ideas. 8 minutes long. It cost the record at least a half star. I almost went down another half star because I think that song is just unlistenable. I do think this record is an interesting evolution when you're listening sequentially. Like, it's kind of cool. You can see where they're going, but to just take it out of context of the full discography and listen to it on its own, I don't think I ever will. I just don't think it's really good as a piece itself. So only 2 stars for Separations for me.
Right. I'm with Cramser 100%. In fact, literally just completely stole everything I was going to say about Freaks, my bottom. I have it 3 stars. I think the hints, like Cramser said, literally, I'm just going to regurgitate what he said. The hints of like future Pulp are there. This is where Russell Sr., violin, guitar, and Candida Doyle come along, plays the organ, piano, keys, stuff like that. So you have that sort of Pulp coming together a little bit. There's some definite growth from the debut in 83, but this one just kind of sounds like they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what sound they're going for. It's like half I want to be Joy Division, a little bit of like I want to be Morrissey and the Smiths, and it's really dark and sort of, I don't know, they just don't know what to do, and it really comes off in the music. I think Jarvis Cocker at this point cannot sing like at all. I can't believe the band survived because his vocals are really weak, out of tune in some places, and he really gets, he controls that. He adds the falsetto later. He does a lot more of like the talk singing. He really finds, his voice after this album, I think. But here, they just don't know what to do. Any hints of the future good Pulp are just lost in some poor songwriting, I think. So yeah, I think it's pretty weak, 3 stars, but at least like the template is there for good Pulp in the future. But Freaks is pretty rough. And I don't like the Russell Sr. sung songs. I don't like Fairgrounds at all with like the carnival stuff, the nightmarish version of Madness. And yeah, just too much Joy Division. I don't know, maybe he's just trying to sing badly because he's trying to be like Ian Curtis, but it just doesn't work for me.
I'm sticking kind of in the same era for my number 6. I've got the debut, but I'm going up to 3 stars. It's a soft 3 stars, but 3 stars nonetheless. I will listen to it again. And in general, this being my first go around with Pulp, I still feel like there's a lot I have to unpack here because I think there's a lot, especially in the later records, going on lyrically that have just a lot of subtext and a lot of double meanings and everything that I really like. But 3 stars. I like My Lighthouse. I think it's really lovely. It's got like this kind of jangly indie folk kind of vibe to it. Some of these songs are just like really easy to get swept away with, which I really like. I think you get some Beatles vibes on Wishful Thinking. I really dig it. It's got a cool sense of worry during the verse. So they have like these techniques and they have talent, like as, writing compositions and everything, getting feel. I think all of their albums sound pretty good. But yeah, just like on Freaks, I'm not crazy about him as a singer, his style and cadence. There are other singers that do this same thing quite well. And, it just doesn't work for me with him for some reason on these earlier albums. I think he's also kind of reaching for notes and like trying to get these moments of power and emotion that just aren't really within his grasp at times. But there's some really cool, like beyond debut kind of musical awareness, especially in the production and like instrument choices. Like there's a really cool Reed solo and like Wishful Thinking. I love the La La La's and Joking Aside. I actually think Blue Girls is really awesome. Love the childlike backing vocals and the piano and reeds all together. It's absolutely lovely and kind of like haunting with its serenity. So they're good at atmosphere. They're good at all these things, but it's not quite who they are yet, even though I think it's a good album. And I think that plays so much into what makes Pulp really awesome later on is they just like, the statements and the voice and the writing comes out so well. Yeah, like they just really eclectic use of piano and everything here, different percussion instruments, got like very cool, breezy, ghostly, whimsical vibe at times. I think that's the strength of this album. I don't like more of the cheerful kind of romps, like Please Don't Worry. And overall, the songwriting could be fleshed out a little bit more. Vocals need more sharpness and more passion for sure. But I think there's enough here to be a good album, or at least very, very interesting. So that's my number 6. It, number 6, 3 stars.
All right, my number 6 is going to be Freaks, the record that both of you have talked about already. They assembled an entirely new band around Jarvis Cocker for this one. Basically, he's the only one remaining from their debut. Much darker, as the title Freaks might imply, as you guys both touched on that. I don't know if I entirely agree with you guys, though, that it's a case of them not knowing what to do. Maybe it kind of is, but to clarify that, I don't think that this is like an all over the place type of record where they're like trying a bunch of different things. I think it's pretty cohesive. It's just maybe the wrong thing to do. They're doing like this Circus Nightmare thing. Tons of organ on everything, just slathered in organ and keys. This whole record is just really, really prominent. It opens with that crazy Circus Nightmare called Fairgrounds, sung by Russell Sr. But I don't think it's all that huge of a departure, this record, from it. I think I Want You could have fit in on the debut record. Master of the Universe employs those octave jumps in the bass that become really common later on in their catalog. Like I said, the organ is all over the place. It gives a really dark, creepy kind of gothicness to the record, really unsettling. It's prominent on nearly every track. It's on Fairground and Never Ending Story. I think it's an interesting experiment, this record, but it's very light on like melody or good tunes. Nothing really sticks in your head here. On the whole, I think the record is very samey, and there's not a lot of variation, and there's not a lot of tempo changes, and there's not a lot of changes in intensity. It's just not a very dynamic record. And I think that's the biggest problem with it. It kind of just sits in one place the whole time. And once you kind of get the mood of it and you realize, okay, they're doing this like organ heavy circus kind of thing, that's just what it is for the whole ride, and nothing really changes. It's fine, but nothing special. I'm going 2.5 stars for Freaks.
Right. My number 6 is going to be It from 1983, the debut. Crams are right on it. 3.5 stars. I think this is a very interesting record, especially for it being 1983. Like it has this like much moderner, more modern sound for being a band that, this came out at the same time as the Smiths debut, even predating that. And it sounds a lot like it has those Jane Lee guitars. I think Jarvis even has like the same type of lyrical bent, very self-aware, very direct as Morrissey. And I think the album sounds really good. And it's just weird hearing it because you don't think this is a 1983 album at all. And really the only thing holding it back is, once again, Jarvis just does not know how to sing yet at all. He doesn't know what to do with his voice. He doesn't know how to, hit the notes that he needs to hit. He's no Morrissey, not yet anyway, as far as vocals go. So that kind of hurts it for me. But it's some really interesting compositions. My Lighthouse is like this little indie folk thing that sounds way ahead of its time. Wishful Thinking is interesting, but it's tough to get around the vocals on this one. They're just like out of tune almost. Joking aside, really shares a lot of lyrically with like Morrissey, that I'm going to complain about something in a kind of dark, woe is me type of way, which is great. But Boats and Trains is a shipwreck or a train wreck or a ship carrying trains wrecking. Just another one that's tough to listen to. And then it gets a little more interesting on side 2. And this is only a 25-minute album, so it's really, really breezy, really easy to get through. Love Love has a little like faux Beatles sound. There's clarinet in there, very sunny. Really cool choral backing vocals in many ways. And the drums have a real natural, cool sound to them. The guitar is super jangly. There's a nice mandolin in it. And all these sounds are very interesting. I think the instrumentals are really cool. It's a completely different band. So it doesn't sound like Freaks or any of their later stuff. But it would have been cool to see them go in this direction if Jarvis could sing. I think they could have had something here, but it takes a little while for this band to get going. 1983, they don't hit it big in Britain until 94. So 11 years after this, they finally get it all together. But this is a cool, interesting record. It's only 25 minutes. It's basically an EP, but very interesting to hear an album like this from a band like Pulp. So it's worth listening to. It's 3.5 stars, but it's definitely worth a listen if you're a Pulp fan.
All right. Let's see if Joe and I stay in tune. Number 5 is Separations. I've got it at 3 stars. A stronger 3 stars than it. I think this is a fun, odd, confident little dance record. And everything Jason said about it applies to me. I just like this much more than he does. Much more synth dance poppy, kind of cerebral in its effect. Though at the same time, I would argue a little bit more colorful. It's got that kind of IDM feel to it, kind of full of lunacy and messiness all at the same time with a little drop of psychedelia. Don't You Want Me Anymore is awesome. Great beat and groove. Love the strings in it. I think it's probably his best vocal performance up to date in this timeline. She's Dead is awesome. It's lovely and kind of dark in a humorous way, just like so nonchalant about these like really heavy things. I love it. Title track is really cool strings, really cool, odd, inventive. I like Down by the River. I think it's a really cool composition. And you're starting to get these big symphonic like elements. And this one kind of has like an Eastern European kind of march to it or something. Great use of slide guitar. Sounds great. Like a runaway cuckoo clock or something. Countdown. It's like roller skate dance or something. Really fun and goofy. I totally agree. I get Nick Cave kind of in a lot of spots throughout this discography, and especially here. My Legendary Girlfriend is really cool. So you're starting to get some of that like impish, youthful, like boyish hue to the lyrics coming in. And I really like that. And at the same time, kind of getting like this new Order Depeche Mode sound. Death 2, very cool. Almost like a Daft Punk vibe. Big influence on them with like some of those big 80s synth leads to it. I like when he says down to the DISCO or whatever. It's just cool. Starting to have more fun, take themselves much less seriously, not trying to create this, gothic, moody atmosphere like they did on Freaks and, not so much kind of tied down to just being full of atmosphere and jangliness and stuff with it. So I think everything's kind of rounding out on Separations, even though I think you can identify it as kind of like their dancey record, but I like it. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think it's a good step in the right direction. So number 5, Separations, 3 stars.
All right, my number 5 is It. Only sold 2,000 copies when it was first released, and then wasn't reissued until 1994. So it was kind of an obscurity. Like you guys said, much folkier than they had been would be known for it later on. But in addition to like the folky vibe, there's a little bit of like new romantic type of thing happening. I don't think it's really like full on or anything, but it's also not purely like a folk record. I can hear like some Spandau Ballet on Blue Girls, My Lighthouse, Wishful Thinking, Joking Aside, I think are all quite tuneful. Love Love, I think it's a fun little tune. It's almost like a cross between music hall and Dixieland jazz. Probably nothing on this record that's going to blow anybody away. And there are, like Joe said, a few clunkers like Boats and Trains is really bad. But aside from that track, though, I think most of it's pretty good. It's quick, it's easy to listen to, it's enjoyable. I think it's a nice intro to Jarvis Cocker, even if it doesn't, assert itself too much or let you really know who they are as a band. I think you get enough of Jarvis's personality on it. So I think it's a decent little record. 3 stars for it.
All right, I'm with Cramser again. We got Separations coming in, 3.5 stars. This one definitely feels like the modern Pulp, the modern, the Jarvis Cocker that we know and love. His trademark sort of naughtiness is coming through a little bit more. He imbues a lot of that directness and sexiness. It's like a little Elvis Costello, a little Morrissey, a little, you guys saying like Nick Cave. And he just does it in such an interesting way that it's hard not to just like get taken in by it. And even like I hate spoken word vocals normally, but the way he does it, he's the only one. Like he can do it as much as he wants. He just has like this attitude and, just the way he speaks and the way he phrases things. It's just so cool, interesting. It's like a little noir he throws in there a bunch. And on this album, that really comes into play. He throws in some lyrics like the future is shining like a giant little beast, shines so bright tonight with its legs open wide. Like he's throwing in like those double entendres and stuff. So you get that fun, impish, body Jarvis Cocker on this album a lot. There's some cool violin on Don't You Want Me Anymore. It has like this Latin flair to it as well, which is cool. She's Dead feels like, okay, this is Pulp right there. There's some cool crying guitar on the Gothic Down by the River. That one definitely has a big noir feel to it. And then like Jason says, it's 2 very different halves, because once you get into that second half, you have a song like Death 2. It's like ABBA almost, with those like big disco bass line, the drums, but with like Jarvis's sour, like very British lyrics and vocals over top. So it's a real interesting juxtaposition between the two. The House is Condemned is a bit of a letdown, especially at the end. It's a Russell Sr. sung song. It has an interesting sound, like it's British, acid house, trip hop, whatever it is. It's a little out of their comfort range, though. I think they do a much better job on subsequent albums of mixing in those styles into their own style. But in this, it kind of sounds like they're trying to fit, their sound into a different style completely. Doesn't work as well. But there's some cool stuff on here. Countdown, again, with a little grungy disco. With a funk guitar. Kind of sounds like a Faith No More track to me almost, actually, but with Jarvis Cocker's, very snooty, almost snooty, I think it's a good word, vocals over it. So interesting, different like pieces of different stuff. I think next album, they really take all that, they put it in the blender and they come out with their own just super unique sound. Here, there's still a little bit, taking other people's sounds and trying to fit into them, I think. But, the template's there for the good Pulp, the great Pulp that would come. And it's definitely a step up. So 3.5 stars, a nice mid-range 3.5. Nothing spectacular, but you can definitely see that they're coming into their own on this one.
I fear this is where Joe and I break apart. Number 4 is His and Hers. 3 stars. I think this one lets me down a little bit given its reputation. And Joe's alluding to it, maybe finding their own sound, something really unique. I don't know if I agree with. I think they find the Pulp sound here, but I think it kind of blends in with a lot of the Britpop stuff. I think it borrows a lot from Blur, especially, which, as far as his vocal performance goes, is a good thing because he's kind of done with his old shtick and getting a lot more melodic. And there's way more melody overall here. Songs are tighter, just better in the most general sense you can think of. There's a little more hop to the step in the songs, a lot more vocal range. The guitars are spinning around and showing off a little more, especially on a song like Lip Gloss. There's cheerfulness, and I like how Joe said, like, his naughtiness and all that. And just kind of that youthful, like, mischievous thing about girls and nudity and all that will come in around. And it's a lot of fun, and it's very cleverly done. It's never, like, crude or anything. It's always kind of, like, adorably bashful and full of curiosity and stuff like that. It's very cool. Have You Seen Her Lately is a really good song, very pretty. I do think there's some weird choices. I hate some of the sound effects on Babies, even though I love the guitar part. She's a Lady has some of those cool throwback kind of gothic vibes to the early stuff. Happy Endings is really good. I like the dreamier, darker stuff, but with the stronger sense of melody and more streamlined sound, I think it works a lot more. And I really like the drum sound on this album. Pink Love is cool. Weird at times. There's actually maybe more of an 80s vibe on some of these albums, especially this one, compared to other Britpop artists, which I think kind of plays in their favor. David's Last Summer is cool. You're getting some post-rock vibes there for sure. I think the album gets better as it goes on, but it also kind of changes and gets kind of oddly moodier. So I think that is a really cool element for it as a full listen. But I got to be honest, the songs on their own don't do a whole lot for me individually. So I definitely think it's better than Separations and kind of a good growing, spot for them. But, it doesn't really excite me or blow me away that much, but soon it will. So I forgot what I've got at number 4, 3 stars for His and Hers.
All right. His and Hers is my number 4 also. I think this is where Pulp finally comes into their own. They sound like a proper rock band here for the first time. Jarvis Cocker's humor shines through a lot more on this right off the bat. First track, I love when he's like, you and the Jesus sandals. Really funny. It's a slightly glammy record. You can hear like influences of old Britishness, like T-Rex and Mott the Hoople and Bowie and all this stuff. But it doesn't sound like a throwback record either. I think it still fits really nicely into the mid-90s, kind of the disillusionment and, the Britpop scene, everything that was going on at the time. So it's kind of cool how they kind of reach back into the past without being like an overt throwback. I think Ed Bowler, the producer, definitely brings a lot to the table. I think he really helps to streamline things. And I think he really does a good job of making the keys fill a role and occupy a sonic space and like operate more musically. I think on the previous records, Separations, and especially on Freaks, the keys were just overtaking things way too much and were dominating the sound of the band in kind of an unpleasant way. But I think they are really cool here. A lot of cool synth sounds and stuff, playing much more interesting parts as well. I think the skittering synths on Do You Remember the First Time work really well. That track has a great bass line too. Also has Jarvis Cocker reaching up into his vocal range a little bit, which is cool to hear. Babies, I think, is a really great tune as well. Really propulsive with great lyrics. And the lead guitar playing has so many hooky lines in it. Have You Seen Her Lately? Tons of different keys and synths on that one, but it's all anchored by this really, really cool bass line. Happy Endings, this big mid-tempo ballad that swells with a sort of grandiosity. I think this is a really good record. Well, it's a good record. It, like Cram, it doesn't blow me away, but it's got a bunch of good songs. And I think that's kind of the band gelling before your eyes. It's the first record where it doesn't feel like they're in their development stage anymore. Like, this is Pulp. And, it's a good record, 3.5 stars.
All right, yeah, me and Crams are breaking up here a little bit. My number 4 is going to be We Love Life, their final record. Big change here, especially from the almost overly processed a little bit. This is hardcore. This is very natural sounding, which was purposely the band went in that direction. They wanted something, pastoral, and it's very environmental. There's songs Weeds and Weeds 2 and The Trees and Wicker Man, Birds in Your Garden. So it's a very different vibe right off the bat. Then This Is Hardcore. And there's some really cool stuff here. The first Weeds, real natural sounding, very dreamy, sweeping, really cool lap steel guitar from Richard Hawley on it. Jarvis, I think, sounds great, really vibrant and alive. And you have Weeds 2, and another kind of flowery track. You get some ghostly vocals echoing around there. You got that sensual but dark and sort of threatening way of speaking on it, which is cool. A lot of that talk singing. The Night That Minnie Pimperly Died, pretty classic Pulp. The Trees, nice and pastoral. Some real nice symphonic synths on there. Wicker Man, I do not like at all. Very melodramatic and just a little too long and a little too serious. It's 8 minutes long. It kind of kills it right in the middle of the album. After that, it gets better. I Love Life's Good. The Birds in Your Garden, very classic Pulp, jangly, upbeat, just completely filled with innuendo and sexual undertones there. Bob Lind, good track. Bad cover version is great. It actually insults Scott Walker, who produced the album. He wrote it before Scott Walker came on to produce, but corker of a song, all the wit that you'd expect. He insults a girlfriend for going with an imitation of himself, and the lyrics are great. It's like a later Tom and Jerry when the two of them could talk, like the Stones since the 80s, like Planet of the Apes on TV. The second side of Till the Band Comes In, that's the insult. So, it's classic Jarvis there a little bit, but I think there's not enough of that on this. Like, I miss some of that wit and humor. Roadkill is very serious, a little too honest for me. Same with Sunrise. I just miss that fun, prickly kind of, Cramsor said impish. I think it's a good word for Jarvis Cocker's lyrics and his attitude and tone. This was a little down for me. I like it. I think I need to give it a couple more spins. I have it at 3.5 stars. It's close to 4. But it didn't quite gel with me, and especially coming after some of these 90s albums that I really love. It was a bit of a come down, but it could grow on me, I suppose.
Yeah, we broke apart there, but not too far off the beaten path. We Love Life is my number 3. I have it at 3.5. I think it's very good. Things really opening up more here compared to This Is Hardcore, which, like Joe says, very processed, very icy, very tight, very cavernous. And then this one, like you said, is just like a big sequence of nature and weather and stuff. It's got like almost like a light, gloomy, kind of rainy vibe, in the middle of nowhere kind of deal to it. And at the same time, it's a little warmer and has like a much bassier kind of sound for me, even though the bass isn't that predominant. Just got a really nice, rich low end. The lyrics are on point, but they're different. Like Joe was saying, there's much less of like the authentic from the heart observation, and it's a little more abstract, a little more poetic. It's still good. I like The Trees. There's those kind of really cool, light, stabby, jabby, like synth string parts coming in and all that. And it's a very much more casual album. It's just kind of like moves along like a sailboat on the waves. There's not a lot of rocking and driving on it. And you're getting some more acoustic guitar, give you like that light kind of rainy feel. I like Wicker Man a lot. I think it's really dreamy and cerebral. I kind of dig it. And then like Jason was saying, with sort of some of the early like kind of glam vibes, I think you're still getting that with the way he sings. Get kind of like a Lou Reed vibe and like the verse of Birds in Your Garden and stuff. It's very cool. There's really great guitar work on Bob Kind. And, I'm not going to throw the guitar work and the guitar part up with most guitar driven stuff that we've covered on the channel, but that's one of the biggest differences from the early albums to the later stuff is some of the guitar work and just, interesting ideas of musical writing and composition, just musical ideas are really flushed out in the last few albums, I think, and it's just really cool. I like Bad cover version a lot. I think the guitar work is really awesome there. It's got like this old kind of 60s chimey Christmas music kind of feel to it almost. Very kind of Phil Spector in a way. Songs towards the end are also cool. Sunrise has some good like sunburst explosive punch to it. It's close to 4 for me because I really like the naturalness of it, but I don't know if I'm ready to get it to 4 because I just want Jarvis Cocker being like the and like that version of Jarvis Cocker, and you don't really get that here. So maybe I'll learn to love it, but right now I merely really like it. 3.5, excuse me, for my number 3, We Love Life. I also love how like they just name their albums on like just what they're going for. Like, this is about We Love Life. This one is hardcore. This one is this. It's awesome.
All right. That is also my number 3. You guys have taken a lot of my review. I feel pretty similarly to you guys. All the nature references. They started recording with Chris Thomas, but they also ultimately ended up shelving those sessions. They got Scott Walker to step in. But to go along with all that nature, it's also very lush and ornate musically. By far their most lush sounding record. The Tree is really cool. Reminds me of a song by the band Nightlands called So Far So Long, which is really cool. Tons of additional musicians on this as well. Richard Hawley appears on 3 tracks, bunch of backing vocalists. Scott Walker himself plays keys and baritone guitar on the record. There's a saw player on it. There's like 5 different percussionists. So there's a lot going on, but it works. It doesn't feel like overkill or like too much or overdone. I think it feels natural. They do a good job of keeping things kind of loose and just warm sounding. And I think it's a really good sounding record. Birds in Your Garden, I think is a great tune, really strong melody. It reminds me a little bit of XTC's Seagulls Screaming Kiss Her, Kiss Her. Outside of that, not much in the way of standout tracks, but I just love the sound and the feeling of it. I think it's really easy to get swept up into the big orchestration of it. It has a very comforting sound, very different from their previous records. I think it's kind of a cool addition to their catalog. 4 stars for me.
Yeah, I feel like I should bump it up to 4. I need to give it one more listen now. We'll see. Maybe I'll follow up Patreon or I don't know, Discord somewhere. Well, I'll let you people know what I think after one more listen. My number 3, however, is His and Hers. And I think the key for Pulp, Jarvis Cocker and everybody else in the band, is to lean into the pulp nature, the soap opera aspect of their name. Sexy, larger than life characterizations, people behaving badly, and it's just out so colorfully through Jarvis Cocker's lyrics. He's funny and bawdy and impish and naughty, just all these things, but he's also super direct. Like there's very few metaphors, similes, like he's not doing riddles here. He's literally just saying exactly what he thinks, which is very refreshing, very nice to hear. And the lyrics, I'm not the biggest lyric guy, but I really like his lyrics. In fact, I probably like them more than the actual music in a lot of cases because they're just so funny and excellent. On this album, I think it kicks off nicely with Joyriders. You have Lip Gloss, which is great. I love the interesting wordplay. It's extravagantly wordy. But the lyrics are so great. Oh, and you feel such a fool for laughing at bad jokes and putting up with all his friends and kissing in public as he sort of, dresses down a woman for, breaking up with him and then going with this other tool who sucks, obviously. And then he dumps her. So, he has a lot of fun with sort of dressing down people for crimes. And, it's not him, but the narrator of his songs he uses well. And he jumps to a lot of different points of view, which is really cool. I love the violin and acrylic afternoons, little stone roses I hear, and have you seen her lately? Babies is, classic Pulp. It's sort of, perverted a little bit about a boy sneaking in to look at or to watch his brothers or girlfriend, something about a friend's girlfriend, them together, peeking out through the wardrobe. She's a Lady has this dark disco to it. I think it interpolates I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor, but without like that bright hope of the original. And here, Cocker uses those spoken word parts super well, really bolsters the tension in the song. And it's all over this great, catchy disco beat and bouncy bass line, which definitely helps, moves things along, even when he's sort of doing his whispery kind of, dark talk singing thing. I love the synth sound, a lot of like big walls of synth here, and it definitely dominates the sound, which is cool, unique, interesting music. Definitely. Happy Endings and Do You Remember the First Time? Typical Pulp songs. You got strong hooks and the breathy vocals and the jingly guitars. Great, interesting synth textures. The wit of the lyrics is just fantastic. Someone Like the Moon gets a little sad. The long extended intro kind of reminds me of Last Night I Dreamt That Somebody Loved Me by the Smiths. I think in general, the album doesn't have too many standouts that rise above the best tracks from their next two albums. But I think everything on here is very good, very pulpy. Like Jason said, the band comes into its own. It has the right sound. This is the Pulp that we know and love. They tighten it up a little bit, but this is a very good album. 4 stars for his and hers.
The three of us all have the same top 2. Will it be a trifecta? Let's find out, shall we? My number 2 is This Is Hardcore. I've got it at 4 stars. I think this album's great. And that's all I have to say. No, I'll say a little more. Aptly named, it is a harder, heavier, meaner album. Packs a lot more power. The fear is awesome. It's almost creepy at times. It's got like this much lower, robust drum sound. I love the lyrics to Dishes when he's like, I'm not Jesus Christ, but I got the same initials. It's awesome. What a way to intro a song. Very cool. And the album is painted with that late 90s kind of edge where everything's kind of like piercing and processed and in your face and extreme and all that. But it works. It's not like overdone, and it's not new metal or anything. It's just really sharp, metallic kind of sounding pop rock, and I think it works. The drums are far less groovy. You're not going to get a lot of those disco beats here. It's just kind of like rock and roll drumming. It's crashing and bass snare, and it works. Smashing along. Party Hard is really good. There's great little production touches too, like the settings on the title track. A Little Soul is great. And everything's still catchy. Like, I don't think they get enough credit for being catchy as hell. I think they're writing really good hooks, but also kind of surprising and interesting. They're not just writing 4-chord kind of songs and everything. Everything kind of takes interesting twists or turns, and they only get catchier over time. The more, slow burn you give them. Definitely not as flowery on this album. Not necessarily darker, but meaner and icier, I'd say. Seductive Barry is super moody and cool. I love the drum sound on this album. Sylvia rules. Probably my favorite song. Stay tuned tomorrow to see if it is. Glory Days is great. I think this one is really complex and has like this chipperness and jovial quality where it feels like it's like a morning talk show. It's like so positive, but like it can't be that positive for them. Like I feel like they're putting on an act here and smiling and gritting through their teeth and maybe mocking someone or making fun of someone. I think it's really cool. Seems a little phony in the best possible way. Yeah, I think it's just super awesome. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Joe wasn't here for it, but like some of those like Automatic and those early Jesus and Mary Chain albums where everything kind of had that kind of sound and texture. It's kind of here, or like some of the more hot singles of the time, like by Republica, Ready to Go, and stuff like that. It's just kind of, really not heavy in a metal way, but just smacking and just sharp and cool and hard to describe, but that's my effort to do so. And it certainly is hardcore. This is hardcore. Number 4. No, number 2, 4 stars. I've had a long day. I'm getting through it.
All right. This is hardcore is my winner. Different class is my number 2. I think smartly Pulp stays in the same lane that they'd been in on His and Hers, which is glammy, disco, new wave, pop rock. Chris Thomas's production, I think, sounds even better than Bowler's on the previous record. It's a type of production that doesn't really call any attention to itself at all. It just sounds good and stays out of the way. I think Cocker's lyrics are even sharper and funnier on this record. He tells really great stories throughout the record. Like every Britpop band, it seems like they're talking a lot about the British class system on this record, hence the album title. Misshapes, Pencil Skirt, Common People, Disco 2000, Underwear, Bar Italia, I think all great songs. However, there is a stretch in the middle that I think isn't quite as memorable, with like Live Bed Show, Something Changed, Sorted for Ease and Wizz, Feeling Called Love. None of those songs, I mean, they're fine. I don't hate them, but I don't find them as earwormy as the best tracks on the record. I think that's a kind of a problem with Pulp in general for me. Even when they changed things up musically, I think Jarvis's vocals always kind of live in a certain range, and I don't think he writes super varied melodies. So I think he does, just the effect of him singing on all of the songs kind of makes a lot of them sound similar. So that's one thing that kind of holds them back and keeps any of the records from elevating to like truly exceptional for me. But I still like the best stuff on here a lot. I think there's some great tunes on it. Pulp are like one of the best examples for me of like a songs band. So none of the records really reach classic status for me, but there's a bunch of really good songs on this record. I think it's a very good record in total, but just not quite a great one. So sticking at 4 stars for different class.
You blew it, Jason. Come on. My number 2 is going to be like Ramser. This is hardcore. Pretty big change up from different class. This one lacking in organic quality at times. Little much on the late 90s sounding. It is from 1998, the worst year in music history. So yeah, it's tough. I think actually this has moved up into, however, my top 5, 498. I don't know. I never got this one before. It always felt like too dark, too foreboding, too harsh and cold. But this week when I was listening to it, I think as a whole, it really works on a lot of different levels. It is dark. It is mean at times, but I think it gets by Jarvis's impeccable wordplay, the brashness, the casual offensiveness of his lyrics, which are great. Opener, The Fear is a wash in loneliness. That siren-like guitar repeating ad nauseum in the background. The lyrics, you're gonna like it, but not a lot. Pretty great there. And the line that follows, that you can't get anyone to come in the sack. Like he's in like a whole nother level of like sadness and like self. I don't know. He seems a little down on himself, or his narrators are down on themselves. Whatever. It's not like that cheekiness that was all over different class. This is like sort of luridness that is kind of like dirty and like uncomfortable in a lot of cases. But you still have some funny stuff like Dishes, Tale of Mr. Mom, Homemaker Doing Chores. Kramser already quoted it. I'm Not Jesus, but I have the same initials is great. Party Hard, he kind of adopts this Bowie-like tenor, half croaking and half crooning. But there's, it's a good tune there. Help the Aged is great, catchy and humorous. A lot of babies, a lot of falsetto. Guitar is nice, active, and the music's great. But Cocker's wordplay, the clever lyrics about getting old, dyeing your hair, pleading that it's time you took an older lover, is pretty hilarious. Despite maybe he's falling apart, that they can teach you stuff, even though he's looking rough. Just really funny stuff there. Although Russell Sr. hated the song so much that he quit because of it, didn't want to record it. So he was not, I don't think he's on this album at all, maybe a little bit, but yeah, he quit over Help the Aged, and I don't get it because I think that song is great. This is hardcore, depraved. Cocker comparing being a rock star to being an adult film star. It's got this sexuality oozing from it, but it's like a darker, little icky sexuality. Nothing dirty and winking like on Different Class, where the sexuality was mixed in, but it was sort of like humorous and fun. This one's a little sleazy and a little, I don't know, just the overall tone of it's a lot darker. And that loungy piano and horns really add to it. I'm a Man's a great song, a little blurry maybe. Sylvia's great. And the album does have this like brightness that comes through on the last 3 or 4 tracks, which is interesting. Like it is really dark and heavy. And then it kind of lightens up with Sylvia, Glory Days, and even The Day After Revolution. Kind of get a glimpse back of Different Class on it, which is nice. You know, you definitely need that after the heaviness of the first part of the album. And yeah, I just think it's a really good album, full of great songs, full of it's a different type of album, but I think they pull it off nicely, the darkness of it. 4 stars, it's like so close to 4.5, but I'm gonna keep it 4 for now, but it is gonna jump into my top 5 of 98. So there you go. I'm discovering more and more albums for 98 as we go through this channel, finally filling it out. Maybe won't hate it so much one day. We'll see.
Right. My favorite album by Pulp is Different Class, and I've got it at 4.5. I think it's really awesome. You know, not quite as good as Park Life, but kind of like a sister city kind of album to it. It's very like-minded in a way. And this album is certainly in a different class of the other albums. It's fun, it's full of energy, full of humor, perfectly fits that 90s Britpop mold. It's got that old school jauntiness to it, slightly like 60s carnival, delightful carnival in a way, not the nightmare carnival. Misshapes has the right note from the album right off the bat. It's perfect. Really great opener with like sunny, passionate vibes that ferociously roam about like a roller coaster that's off the rails, but also somehow knows where it's going. The more fun and like childlike wonder they bring on, it seems like they get better and better. The more they kind of embrace the immaturity, it works. They really just are so loose on here, and the lyrics, like Joe said, can be just so clever and, you know, full of just this charming sexuality without being crude or smutty. They're playful, coy, humorous, very sly. Common People song is absolutely fantastic. It is such an earworm. Absolutely love it. His cadence and sense of adventure and storytelling is exactly what you want. He's just a great storyteller. Like Joe said before, he's not twisting the words and making you reread, think. He's just telling you a story, but he's just got just such character behind it. It works so well. I Spy brings the perfect amount of like foreboding darkness to break it up a little bit. So I kind of disagree with Jason that they're not an albums band, because I think a lot of their albums, the good ones, have really good balance to it. Brings in some clouds with, you know, but still clever and light. Disco 2000 is awesome. The verse is such a Gloria ripoff, but like, who the hell cares? It just works so well. Live Bed Show, I love. Songs are so mature and like this childlike approach to these very adult situations, just perfectly written. Sorted Out for Ease and Wizz has a really cool Bowie vibe to me. I like that song a lot. Feeling Called Love is very cool. Everything's so catchy and full of this charming enthusiasm, like Underwear. How else, you know, if you gave 10 bands a song like Underwear, like it's going to be so hard for someone to pull it off and just do it the right way that it should be done. And they manage it here. I think it's really charming, very impish, very clever. And the music's great. Like we were talking about before, the playing and everything gets really interesting. It gets surprising and it gets catchy. So they never, lose sight that they are still a rock band. And they just pretty much nail it on this album. So my favorite is Different Class, 4.5 stars.
All right. My winner favorite Pulp album is This Is Hardcore, produced by Chris Thomas again, who produced Different Class. I don't think it's a huge departure musically, but it does have its own distinct vibe, I think, in their catalog. Definitely leans more heavily on guitar rock than they had previously, not quite as much of that disco and new wave thing creeping in. I think it's also a little more produced as well. You got big female backing vocals on the opening track, The Fear, more orchestration throughout, strings, hand claps, various programming. There's 4 different engineers on this record that are credited with nothing but programming. But I think all of this also makes it just the most varied Pulp record. I think there's several songs here that sound like nothing else in their catalog. Seductive Berry has this very sparse sound, really spacey and mysterious, which is cool. The title track has this very big and orchestrated sound as well. It's kind of like a 50s TV show theme or like a Bond score or something. It's pretty cool. The song Party Hard, I think, brings the most disco vibe. There's definitely not as much of that on this record, but it does make appearances here and there. That song also has Jarvis Cocker sounding a lot like Bowie, very much so. I think more so on that track than any other point in the discography. A lot of songs that I like a lot here: The Fear, Dishes, Party Hard, Help the Aged, A Little Soul, I'm a Man. I think those are all really cool tracks. Bigger, grander, kind of stadium-sized rock. Less dancey, but I think it's really ambitious, more variety. I think it's all really, really tactfully done. They seem really in control here. They're able to kind of like bounce around from sound to sound here a little more. So I just think it has held my interest the most. I think with some of the other records, even as great as Different Class is, there's a point in that record where you're like, okay, I get this sound and I've heard enough of it. And this one never really settled into that for me. So still only 4 stars, not getting up to 4.5 for Pulp, but some really good records and some really great songs.
Right. Ending things off with A Different Class is my number 1. I got it 5 stars. It is my second favorite Britpop album ever, just behind Park Life. Another 5-star, but slightly better, I think. This one has its own unique take on class in Britain, much like Park Life. But this one, I think, even might be a little sharper as far as the lyrics go, exploring like the big divide. Obviously, I mean, you have Common People, which is pretty much like the standard on the subject of the class divide in Britain. Just a magnificent, marvelous song. Some of the best lyrics you'll ever hear. And just the way the song builds and builds and builds and like keeps getting faster and faster. And it just like carries you along with it. It's just amazing. Kicks off with Misshapes, which also explores that, divide between the haves and the have-nots, which is great, but it's not all politics. There's tons of, hedonism and, lewd and lascivious behavior all over the album. You have Pencil Skirt, which has some just absolutely killer lines. When he says, well, I've kissed your mother twice. Now I'm working on your dad. He drops in one of those, like he just, everything he does just really emphasize that sleazy behavior. Just it's a song about sleeping with your friend's, partner who's they're engaged or whatever. And just, he makes it so, I don't want to say like fun, but like, it's just such a interesting song to listen to him go through all that. The little grunts and affectations in his voice. He really like savors every word and makes it a little unsettling, but also kind of like sexy in a way. I Spy, another one that has like the sleazy, sexy vibe to it. Another one of his misanthropic, despicable, cheating, self-loathing characters. But the song is a hoot. He's a deviant and he just doesn't care. Disco, 2000 takes Gloria into a danceable track oozing with nostalgia. Just the storytelling is fantastic. Just the little one-off lines, your name is Deborah, it never suited ya. Just, I love every lyric on this entire album. Totally blew my mind. You have Live Bed Show, which is a touching rumination on aging and sexuality. Something's Changed is like, it's polite and honest and nice. And so it's like this big change up from everything, all the pithy witticisms of the other songs. There's nothing lurid at all about this. It's just like really nice. Got some big soaring strings. So it really stands out, which is great. Some great pathos to his lyrics there. Sorted for Ease and Wizz has one of the catchiest choruses in the whole repertoire. All about having fun taking drugs at a concert. And then the next morning when the drugs are gone and everyone's sobering up, turns into a tale of a sad old guy stuck at a festival, which is great. Feeling Called Love has this ABC, Lexicon of Love, Forever Together vibe, that cool low modulated synth, kind of burns before it kicks into gear there. Underwear, another just great lyric. Monday Morning's great. Bar Italia kicks things off or ends things on a cool, playful, light morning after, drunken, hazy morning after kind of manner. So I think it's just pretty much a perfect album. I don't think there's a single track that isn't great. Lyrics are all great. The music's all great. Yeah, 5 stars, masterclass there in Britishness. Yeah, different class. Is in a different class. Yes, it is. 5 stars.
It was a hardcore review, Jason. You're wrong about this. Joe and I almost lined up completely, all but one. We haven't seen eye to eye like this since ever, maybe? I don't know.
Austin, all 3 of us had the exact same list.
Well, that's fun.
All right. Well, let us know what you think of the Pulp discography. Which is your favorite? What do you think of our lists? All that stuff. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not yet done so. Be sure to check the video description as well. You've got links to all of our social media there, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, as well as our website, our Patreon, and our merch store. Definitely check those out as well if you'd like to support the channel further. Patreon's a great way to do so. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check back tomorrow for our top 10 favorite Pulp songs. We'll see you then.